Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Brian Capron, the man behind one of Coronation Street's most legendary characters, Richard Hillman. He's kindly agreed to come on the podcast today to tell me about his time on the street, which viewers of Classic Corrie have been glued to their seats watching recently, just like I was 20 years ago when it first aired. What was it like playing Corrie's OG serial killer? Was he happy to leave the show when he did, or should he have stayed at the party? Let's find out. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, lovely to be on it.
Really, really nice having you on here today. It's been 20 years since you met your watery end and Weatherfield Canal. Are you still recognised by people in the street all this time later?
Yes, yeah, all the time. Unbelievable, really. I'm amazed I still look vaguely like I used to look.
Is it nice reactions that you get when people see you?
Yes, I think there was something darkly comic about the character. So people always, it's always a bit tongue-in-cheek, I think, you know. But yeah. I get people who just kind of pass me sometimes and just go, "Murderer." But yeah, I was at an event the other night, and lots of people, you know, wanted to know, you know, all about it and stuff like that. And but they do get extra points when people remember me from Grange Hill, which was like so long ago, like 40 years ago.
40 years ago. I think that was even before I was born, Brian.
Yeah, yeah. It's like 1980 or something like that. I did Grange Hill for 4 years. So a lot of people remember me from that when I was a very nice, lovely, kind, gentle teacher.
Whatever happened?
Well, my agent made me come out of that show. She said, you don't want to be typecast as this nice teacher. And of course, a little way down the line, the complete opposite happened.
So I've been rewatching the 2002, 2003 stuff on ITV3 recently. Have you noticed like an increase in people recognizing you or more Hillman stuff in the last year or so since it's been on?
Well, yeah, my wife says that it has gone up. You know, I don't really know. I suppose there have been more people talking to me about it, but people trying. I don't do Facebook. I'm on Facebook, but I don't do it, if you know what I mean. I've had to be on it when I've done rehearsals for theatre and things, but a lot of people try to get to me through Facebook through her. So she's had apparently hundreds of people trying to contact me, I think. But I don't do any social media, you know, because I just don't want to know what anyone else is doing, and I don't want to know what they're saying about me.
So you talked about the fact that you were in Grange Hill in the 80s. I mean, your TV career goes right way back to the early 70s, doesn't it? Tell me a bit about how you got into acting.
Well, I went to a grammar school called in Sunbury-on-Thames, and I'm basically from a council estate in Staines. So acting was so far from my mind. My mother worked on Heathrow Airport as a clerk in a pay office, and my stepfather was a sergeant policeman on the airport. And my mother wanted me to be what was called an air steward in those days, and she even brought the forms home. I thought, well, I ended up in another camp profession at the end. But anyway, at this school, in those days, you didn't have drama, O-levels or GCSEs. You did get school plays. And a feature of my career has been people dropping out at the last minute and me being lucky enough to be thrown into an interesting situation. So there was a play at the school. A very good English teacher used to do very good productions, and he did a production of The Crucible, which is a very famous play by Arthur Miller. And I went up and auditioned for it, and I didn't get any part at all. And I was jealous of my mate who got a part. And I can even remember his one line, which was, "The deputy governor's arrived." Because I was so upset. And then the lead guy who was playing John Proctor, who was the main part, left suddenly. He just left school. And they looked around, and my English teacher suggested me, and I got the part. So
cool.
I was so naive about plays that I didn't even realize that people applauded at the end. You know what I mean? And someone pushed me forward in the applause, and the applause grew. And I thought, oh, this is good, you know. But then I got with a mate who was also interested in acting. We went to, we did a bit of, we did Billy Liar in amateurs and things like that. And someone said, you should be an actor. And you thought, well, how the hell do you do that? And they said, well, you go to something called a drama school. So my friend was a year above me, and he auditioned around and found out about them all. And he got into a place called Central School of Speech and Drama, which is a very good drama school. And at that time, I was retaking my A-levels and working in a riding stables and delivering cars at the Heathrow Airport. And I thought, I'm never going to get in a drama school. And my friend's done, great. And the next year, I auditioned around and I got into LAMDA, which is a fabulous school, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. And that completely changed my life. And of course, after that, it's still very difficult. But I think 3 years at drama school was just, fantastic. If I'd never become an actor, it was such a wonderful thing. I mean, this was 1967. Can you imagine the late 60s to 70? And I didn't manage to get a decent agent, but I did get straight into repertory theatre, a very good rep at the Northcote Theatre in Exeter. And the people who were there at that time who went through there was Robert Lindsay, Bob Hoskins, John Nettles, lots of very good people. So it was a good training ground. And then I was very lucky. A play transferred with Alison Steadman. I don't know if you know Alison Steadman, a very good actress, very well-known actress. We transferred to the Bush Theatre in London, and I knew it was my big chance. And a friend of mine from drama school, I couldn't get any agents to come along. I got wonderful reviews in the Times and the Telegraph and all the papers, and nobody would come and see it. And my friend brought along his agent, and 1973 that would be. And this guy came up to me on the last night he turned up, and he came up to me and said, the agent said, right, here's my card. Come and see us on Monday. What do you want to drink? And that completely changed my life. And then I got into television from there. And so throughout the 70s, I did all the things like, the Sweeney, Tales of the Unexpected, Z Cars, all these police programs, stuff like that. So really, I was always doing television, and I went back to theatre. If I had a plan, it was to get established on television in order to put bums on seats in the theatre, because that's my favourite thing. So that kind of worked out in the end.
Yeah. Although, I mean, I think at the end of the day, Richard Hillman has been your most iconic role, hasn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. I nearly had very big things happen to me after it, and some disappointing things, because things clashed with other programs, so they didn't get green lit. And so I was a bit disappointed, really, because I kind of had the world at my feet for a moment or two there. But in the end, it all kind of crashed down. But then I got offered to do Where the Heart Is, and that kind of saved me. So I had something I went in that for 3 years. And that kind of pulled me along and kind of dragged me along from the Corrie situation. And then, I did Midsummer Murders and all these other things.
Yeah. You have stuck with Corrie things as well, haven't you? I mean, sometimes when people leave a show, they say, I'm done with that. They kind of put it in a box and move on. But you've always seemed happy to do personal appearances. You've been on the documentaries. You've popped up on the tour. Would you say it's important to keep that connection to the show?
I think the difference with me is that Corrie happened late in my career. I was in my 50s.
Yeah.
So I was very grateful, because I was a jobbing actor who was kind of a kind of known unknown face on television. I'd had my own comedy series at one point. I'd been on television a lot, so I was a kind of a face. But Corrie was very special, and what soap can do for a jobbing actor, it can give you a lift up. And that's exactly, I wouldn't be working today, 20 years later, I'm still working because of Corrie. So I owe it quite a lot. And how lovely. I work with people, I mean, as you probably know, I do panto every Christmas. I used to be very sniffy about it, but I love it because it gets me. I work with lots of young people, and I work with lots of very talented people who haven't had the opportunities that I had. I call it, I've touched the wall. I've been to the awards, I've been to the parties, I've seen all that, done all that. And it's a lovely thing. A lot of it's rubbish, but it's fun, and a feeling of some kind of achievement that you've had that little bit of success that other people aren't lucky enough to get. And also financially, it set me up for life.
Of course. So let's talk Richard then, because there's been lots of villains in Coronation Street's past, even a few serial killers, but only a few of them go down in legend in the same way as Richard Hillman has. What is it about the character that you think has captured the viewer's imagination so much?
Well, when I went into the show, Coronation Street was drowning in the ratings, and EastEnders was winning everything. And I was cast by the female producer at the time, but after 6 months, and I actually thought I was going to get the sack. It was in the Sun that I was going to get the sack, and a few other people, like Sally Lindsay as well. You know, we were all going to get the sack. And then they got rid of the executive producer and the producer, and brought in Carolyn Reynolds as the executive producer and Kira Roberts as the producer. They knew the street backwards, and they wanted to go back to the long burn storylines. And it just so happened that they honed in on my character. They saw something in the character. And so a combination, serendipity, you know, a combination of things happened. I think that right from the beginning with Helen, who I'd been in the show before. I imagine probably aware of that. I played a social worker, you know. Yeah. And so I knew Helen, and I decided everybody would know that, you know, all the guys that get with her are going to be a nightmare. So I worked very hard on creating a genuine affection for the family and love for her, and thought very carefully. So, which really paid off, because his everything he did was for her and the family, because he'd never had a family. So that built this kind of very firm foundation before he kind of goes to the dark side. Yeah. And that really paid off. And the other thing that really counted, well, I had to threaten people. My wife was very good. And because when you get the scripts, got exclamation marks, you know, so you go, you know, you're looking at me like that. And my wife said, don't do any of that stuff. Just cool. Be really cool and quiet. And that really worked. And then one day at the end of one episode, with Norris, the director said to me, we got to the end of the episode, and it was in the street, and Norris was by the cabin or somewhere. And I looked, and he said, this director said, do your look. I went, what look? He said, your look. I said, I don't know what look. He said, you do a look. And then I suddenly realized that I'd developed this kind of look with the quiet, cool thing, you know, which was all part of the character. And so you had a long burn storyline. And the first time that I was aware that they were going to do that was I was talking to somebody in a pub one night who was the script editor. And she said to me, has anyone talked to you about what's going to happen to you? And I said, no. And I said, you know that they're going to hone in on your character, and you're going to have a 1 hour special. And I said, yeah, what, really? I said, yeah. I went, oh, that's fantastic. And that was the night when I let Dougie die. And there's a party going on at the same time. And it was a fabulous episode. And suddenly the whole thing changed, you know.
And I like how you said that you let Dougie die, because I mean, everyone says you killed him, but he found himself, didn't he? He did. Those dodgy railings.
He deserved it. It was a wonderful episode. Really wonderful episode. John Bow is very good now. I worked with him before, but I think he was sad to leave the show, actually. But anyway, so it started from there, and then we're very lucky getting a particular writer in called John Fay. When you're doing the show, I mean, I wasn't in the show very long, really. I was in less than 2 years, but I did over 200 episodes. So the pressure was unbelievable. We went to 5 a week while I was doing it. I know it's 6 now, but 5 a week was unbelievably difficult. It used to be 2 a week when I first did it. You know? So the pressure's unbelievable. You have no time to do anything. My whole life was really just, working, learning lines every night, and treating myself to maybe 1 glass of wine and 10 minutes of television. And every now and again, I'd go out and go mad. But really, most of the time, it was very disciplined, because I was living with Jimmy Harkisham, which made life quite complicated.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah. He's an old mate of mine, because we did a children's series together for 3 years.
Really? Oh, I think he's brill on Coronation Street. We love a bit of him here on the podcast.
He's a character. I call him Asian Elvis. When I first saw him walk into a room, I thought, my God, who's that? This is when we were at the BBC. Yeah. And we actually became firm friends, and I was going through a divorce at the time, and he was very nice to me. He's got a very good heart, Jimmy. I mean, he's a complicated person, but we became very, and so when I went to the street, after I'd been there a little while, we moved in together. So that was quite interesting, let's say.
I bet it was. So I just found it interesting what you said earlier about the fact that when you joined the show, it was a little while until the whole serial killer thing was floated to you, because you came in like supposedly as Alma's cousin, and I don't know whether it was ever even confirmed that that was actually
Nobody's
what you
ever
are, whether it
confirmed
was
it.
part of his plan.
Nobody knows.
No,
Nobody knows. No. I mean, it was really, and also it's one of those strange things. I mean, what an illogical profession it is. As you can tell, I'm not even Northern, so I put on a slight Northern accent. And from then on, everyone thinks I'm Northern, so straight after that, I go into Where the Heart Is, doing a Yorkshire accent, another dodgy accent. Me and my mate, who are both Londoners, so we used to call it Yorkney. So I made my life and career practically up north, in a completely false way, really, but terrific fun.
You're based down in Brighton, aren't you? Is that right?
Yes, I'm in Brighton. Yes,
Yeah.
A great supporter of Brighton and Hove Albion, who've done very well this year.
Well, I'm in Southampton, so we're both on the south coast together today.
Oh my God! Oh yeah, well, yeah, we had an interesting match with you the other day, didn't we? Yeah.
So you said that Dougie's death with that hour-long episode was the first time that you kind of had an idea about what was going to be happening for you. How with Patricia and then Maxine, how kind of far in advance did you have an idea about what the trajectory of the character's story was going to be?
No trajectory. I had no idea at all. I'll tell you what happens, because you're so immersed in these scripts. And I was going to say, you have 5 scripts coming in on a Thursday, and you're going to be shooting on the Sunday. You only have Saturday off. So you rip out everything that's nothing to do with you. And you just think, oh, well, I can learn that before so-and-so, and then I'll learn that on Tuesday, and then whatever. And the Tuesday comes and you think, I'll learn Thursdays on Wednesday, and then on Wednesday they say you've got to go and have your photos for front covers, and I've seen people break down in tears because they need the time to learn, sorry, what did you ask me? I was
just asking about how long in advance you knew.
Yes,
what the main trajectory was going to be.
Well, okay, so what would happen is you'd go in. About a week before, maybe the makeup girls would get the scripts before us, and in makeup, while you're doing the previous week's stuff, they'd go, "Have you seen what you're doing next week?" And I go, "No," and they go, "Oh my God, you're doing X, Y, Z." And I go, "Oh my God, really? How thrilling!" But no, rarely did I know. The only time I was pulled in was towards the end, about 3 months or 2 months before my demise. And I remember going in and Kieran saying to me, "Well, we decided how your death is going to be, and you're going to go you're going to drown in a canal, And I thought, how boring,
Really?
I imagine myself because I thought, well, it had been done before in a kind of way, and I just thought. But I had no idea, of course, about how fantastic it was. I mean, it was unbelievable, simply because, when we talk about that later, perhaps.
So I remember at the time there were lots of rumours about who your final victim would be, because Tracy Shaw there were rumours that she was leaving the show. Georgia Taylor was leaving around the same time, so it wasn't going to be Toya. So that must have been quite fun to.
Well, that's what lifted it, really, I think, which really we suddenly got massive viewing figures, was the fact that Tracy was going. And I was on holiday. I had a couple of weeks off, and I was in Italy, sitting around a pool, and my phone went, and it was Tracy. And she said, "Brian, I've just heard how I'm going out of the show. It's going to be fantastic for you. You're going to murder me. You're going to kill me with a crowbar." And I said, "What, really?" I thought, blimey, because her going out, that's what really kind of lifted everything. And suddenly, the ratings went up, and the mood at Granada lifted, because we felt we were doing. And the other thing was, Coronation Street had never taken any notice. They were snooty about the soap awards, but they realised that because EastEnders were winning everything, they actually aimed that storyline at the soap awards. And of course, when finally it happened, well, we cleaned up with everything.
Tell me what it was like filming that scene, because that is such an iconic Corrie moment.
Which
scene
scene?
in Maxine's lounge.
Well, that was I mean, I thought the whole idea was so clever that he took on Aid's identity,
Mm.
and the fact that Helen doesn't get it at all until the final. It's so funny. I mean, also all the iconic characters were still around then, which was the joy of my part. Was I worked with so many different people, and sometimes you could be on the street and just have the same kind of people all the time. So that was terrific. Well, it was just the tension on the set was unbelievable. As it was very clever how they had Eileen Derbyshire watching a kind of bit of a creepy
that was a slasher
horror
film or something, wasn't she?
Yeah. I mean, that was very clever. So breaking in the back and putting on those of Aid's clothes and everything, but his kind of peaked cap and all that, baseball cap and all that kind of stuff. The funny thing is, I could never disguise myself with a baseball cap because I look like the character. That's the ironic part. But I do tell people, and Tracy refuses to remember any of this, but the funny thing about it was, I don't know if you've seen me tell this story before, but when he's murdered her, obviously I've had that fantastic line when she bursts in, and first of all,
say it for us, Ryan.
You are kind of just whacked Eileen, of course, which is horrendous. This poor old woman, and then in comes Tracy. And I obviously, that famous line, "You should have stayed at the party, Maxine." It's just great. I almost wanted to do it. "You should have stayed at the party, Maxine."
Yeah.
You couldn't do that, But I always tried to make him very believable as a character, and I kind of, his reaction to what he's done. And he's not really a nasty, cold, cruel person. He's just driven by what guided me really, and I've said this many times, is that often people said about murderers that lived in the street and been a normal family man, which happens quite a lot, unfortunately. People always just say, "Well, he was such a nice guy, always said hello to you in the street, always washed his car on Sundays." And that's what was in my head all the time, to make him so normal. But he had this other dark side. And the other thing that made it very special for me, I thought, was the dark humor that they put in, because it was almost as if he was winking at the audience, which I absolutely, there were so many points where he was kind of almost winking to the audience. And one that I always say is one of my favorites is walking down Coronation Street with Audrey coming towards me when all the Audrey stuff was happening. And she just comes up and she goes, "Hello, Richard." And he walks past and goes, "Goodbye, Audrey."
Yeah, brilliant. I loved it when after you'd bop Maxine on the head, then it cuts to somebody stabbing a fork into a pit of meat.
That was the butcher's.
Yeah,
that was very clever. Well, it was a very contentious episode because it was, right on the bewitching hour, as it were.
Well, I was going to say it's fairly gory for whenever it was 7:30 in the evening.
Well, I'll tell you what was a big problem before that was Patricia's death.
Oh,
because that's when I whacked her with a shovel.
Shovel to the head.
Yeah. That was a really difficult scene to make believable. And when I first got the script, I thought there's no way that there's no motivation for this at all. It's I was really struggling with it, and I went to see them and I said, "Can we change this?" And they said, "No, you can't change it." And I thought, "Oh, this is so gratuitous. It's horrible." There's no. And then a lovely actress who played that part, Annabelle Apsian, who's a wonderful actress, and she was only in for a few episodes.
Yeah.
But we were there, and we had a very good director. Well, a director who would go along with what we said. We just had this idea suddenly with it, because there was a kind of a scrabbly, kind of messy thing, and we worked it out like that. And then I think she or one of us, I can't remember who, said, "Why don't you spit at me? Why don't you spit?"
Yes, she does, doesn't she?
And it wasn't in the script, right? And I went, "Yes, that's it."
Yeah.
And that's what made it. And so spat right, wallop. And it really worked. And they, as I say, that they didn't want to change anything, but the director thought it was a great idea. And he said, "Look, just put it on my responsibility and we'll do it."
Yeah, no, that was
So
brilliant. That was great.
that made that really work, because otherwise it just there seemed there's no reason for it. It was tricky. So that was a
Mm.
nice little thing that actually worked out from an improvised moment.
Yeah, I love it. So we talked about that should have stayed at the party line earlier. Another line that's you can't escape, I'm sure, is that Norman Bates with a briefcase,
Wow,
which Gail
fabulous.
delivers. Yeah, Gail delivers that to Richard on the confession episode. Great writing and brilliant delivery by Helen Worth as well,
It
wasn't it?
was. It was. I'll give her that. She did it beautifully. And I
Mm.
have to say that, the biggest accolade you can get on the soap is to have a two-handed episode. And the kids
Yeah,
came in about a
and
minute or two.
yeah, Corrie so
Really.
rarely does those. So what was that like?
Well, it's very difficult because you're still doing all the other episodes. You don't get any more rehearsal time. And the amazing thing about that one, I mean, I thought it was an amazingly written episode. I
Yeah.
think that was John Fay, and because he had to do the backstory, he had to invent a backstory for a character, that had no backstory, and kind of make sense of it all, which he did. And I don't think I've ever been in such an amazing atmosphere on a set, because the lovely thing about Corrie, certainly then, was like being part of a family. All the crews are just amazing. And the tension on the floor, knowing what a difficult job it was, all the lines you had to learn, and the pressure on it was unbelievable.
Mm.
But we actually shot the whole of the first half in one take.
Did you really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it was just amazing. Yeah, and it made it. It really made it. It was such an incredible episode, and of course that fabulous line came out. It was such a brilliantly written episode. It was just incredible. So I felt so lucky to get what an exciting storyline. They don't come any better than that.
Oh,
Really.
I know. And Helen Worth as well. She's such a Corrie legend. I think only Ken Barlow. He's the only character that's been in more episodes of Coronation Street than Gail has at this point. So tell me what it
Yes.
was like to work alongside her.
We got on great because I knew her before.
Mm.
I think my favourite person in the show is Sue Nichols, though. She's the real grande dame. Helen doesn't quite fit that grande dame thing, So but she was always very, very, very generous, and it just worked really, really well. I think when we did the marriage episode, people said to me, she thinks it's real. Funny thing about the marriage, we had a marriage episode, was that was another weird thing that happened. Was originally there was a marriage in EastEnders at the same time, which was going into OK magazine.
Right.
And at the last minute, the girl who was involved, she had to drop out the show or something. And so suddenly they didn't know what to do. And they saw that we were getting married. So they said, OK, you do the OK. So we had 11 pages in OK magazine of our blinking wedding. So that was great. And of course, all the time as the tension built, the audience know he's a bad man. And it just built and built and built. I mean, the twists and turns in the plot were just amazing. I mean, I actually thought when they said to me with Audrey's thing, you're going to try and make her believe she's got Alzheimer's. And I thought, oh, well, that's boring, because I want to go around killing people with crowbars. But that was brilliant as well. And it was almost, there's a moment of farce when he's in the house, and he sets it on fire, and he removes he's removing the batteries from the alarm, and they come back, and he's in the cupboard. And it's like,
he does. He hides in the pantry or something, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it was brilliant. I mean, every different aspect was just fabulous. I also loved working with Malcolm Hebden, because he's what I call a proper old actor, And we had such fun, and he's so dry, and he's got this kind of bitter act, and we used to take the mick out of each other all the time. I adored him. I thought he was lovely. And also another thing that I loved was working with Vera and Jack. And I had a wonderful moment with them, because I had to remember an awful lot of figures, because we were talking about equity release mortgages or whatever, and I was having a bit of trouble with it. And Bill Tarmy, isn't it, Bill?
Yes. Bill and Liz Dawn.
He leans. We're sitting around the table, and he goes, He said, I don't do any of that learning bollocks, Brian. He said, write it on a bit of paper, stick it behind the teapot, and read it off that. I go, I can't do that, Bill. I can't do that. He said, no, just write it on a bit of bloody paper.
That's so funny. That's brilliant.
And
I always I was going to say as well that the kids who were involved in your story, what was it like to work with them? Because Jack and Tina, they're still both in the show now, and I was right, even 20 years ago, I could tell that they were something special.
They were fabulous. It was wonderful. I mean, that's what made the character work, because he desperately wanted this family, you know. And they were great to work with. We had such a laugh, you know, and taking the mick out of each other all the time, you know. And David, God, I forgot, what's his real name?
Jack P. Shepherd.
Oh, Jack, yeah.
Yeah.
He used to, I mean, his mum was around all the time, you see, and he couldn't, you know, it's annoying because he was always kind of, you know, he wanted to be Billy Big Boots, you know, but his mum was always around. And I remember when I went back on the street for some publicity, because I was doing a show up at the Lowry, I think, and they were both there. And I said to Jack, I said, does your mum still, you know, hang around all the time? She said, oh, no, got my own flat, you know, there's none of that goes on now, I'm independent, you know. And the phone went, oh, hello, Mum.
Brilliant.
But no, they were lovely, and Tina's an absolute sweetheart. So I thought they were great, right? And we had such great times. They were very exciting. We always used to make each other laugh all the time.
And it all ended with you driving into a canal.
Yes, of course.
I've got such vivid memories of watching that episode, because I was at university. It was my second year at university. I was sharing a house with some people, including my now wife, and I was watching that episode alone in the house, and I was recording it because she was out, and I'd never been so captivated by such a breathtaking episode as that one. And like, as soon as it finished, I would like rewind it, watch it again. It was brilliant. What do you remember? You know, when you said when you found out that you were going to go into a canal that you were a bit nonplussed by it, but do you remember your reaction as you heard more about what it was actually going to be like?
Well, they got a James Bond stunt team in to do it properly, and it was incredible. I mean, we used 5 cars had to be used.
Really?
Yeah, because you see, the car is on an A-frame pulled along first of all, and also the director who directed that did a wonderful job of making you the most difficult. So first of all, it's on an A-frame, and he's shooting inside, and we've got they're struggling inside, all of that bit, you know. And then there's another car by the canal that's had the gearbox and the engine stripped out, and it has a cannon underneath it, and it shoots it up in the air with dummies inside at that moment. But he shot it so well that it was almost like because he shot inside the car, you felt everyone lift off, which of course wasn't the case because there were dummies in there. And then when it goes into the when it went into the canal, they didn't realize that the canal was just a bit shallow, so they had to so it didn't go under the thing. So at the time they had to take the roof off of another car and get divers underneath to pull it, just the roof underneath, which was mad. And that night was the coldest night in history. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning we were doing that, and it was so cold, and I had to be in a body bag in the cold, which was not very nice.
Well, it must have been very early on in the year, mustn't it? Because I think it was like March that you left, so they would have filmed that. It must have been like January time or so.
Well,
February.
Well, no, because Coronation Street only. I mean, when I did it, you just shoot the exteriors the week before.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
but still pretty cold though.
It was really cold. But then, of course, the studio stuff, the underwater stuff, was all done in an underwater tank at Fleetwood, where they train helicopter pilots who come down in the North Sea. They have a mock-up helicopter that goes in. So we then there had 2 more cars, one at a different height underwater, and of course we had to learn to act underwater, which was very exciting. So we were there for about 3 days, and we had to. It's very strange because you're underwater and you have to be weighted down.
Yeah.
And you have a breathing apparatus, and you have your eyes closed underwater, and then they count down on your fingers, and action, and you throw away the breathing apparatus, and then you kind of act.
Was it a bit scary?
Oh no, I loved it. I thought it was fabulous. I mean, it was so exciting. I mean, the whole thing was just so brilliantly done. And of course, they only had one shot to do. When you see the car go into the canal, the flashing lights and up and into the canal, they could only do that once, and they're covering it with all these different cameras, and they got it. And of course, it's become an unbelievable. And of course, another line is "I love you," I love you,
and
all
the
that
song.
stuff.
I bet you can't escape that "You and Me" song, can you?
I know, it's incredible the amount of times that people, mention it to me, and so it's become this extraordinary thing that I was part of. As I say, through serendipity, through even when I went up for the part, there were 20 other people reading for it. They didn't even do a screen test. And I thought it was a waste of time because, I didn't believe that. I'm an EastEnders person, really, and I was in EastEnders, but my time there was cut short.
Yeah.
And so I thought you could have real, genuine people in a northern soap, And so I had to go up to Granada in those days. I went up there, and I had an abscess on my tooth. Had to get an emergency antibiotics, and I thought I've got to go all the way to bloody Manchester, and I went there, and also the person in before me, I could hear the interview, one of those awful interviews where you hear it going brilliantly, oh yes, and the guy came out, went, yes, lovely, and all. I thought, oh crikey, So I went in and I thought, I hope they please don't ask me to read it Northern. So I read about 7 or 8 lines, and they said, oh, we quite like that, Brian. Could you just do it in a Northern accent? So I read it in a Northern accent. I thought, oh, there we go. So, and then about a week and a half went by, and I've got a beach hut in Brighton, in Hove, where I live. And I was on a Friday night, and the phone went. And I thought, oh, my agent wants me to go out for a commercial on Monday. I'm not going to ignore it. And it kept going. And I thought, oh, I'll have to answer it. And I went, yes. So, remember you went up for Coronation Street about a week and a half ago? I went, yes. They went, well, they're offering you a 6-month contract. I went, what? It was mad. Absolutely mad,
And the rest is history. So that definitely is serendipity how you got that role, wasn't it? It really, really was.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
After you finished Coronation Street, did you carry on watching and kind of for a little bit to see, what was next for Gail and the kids, or did you just move on?
To be honest, no, I didn't. I know I've never watched soap really,
No.
any soap. So I always had a kind of interest in Coronation Street in that when I was first in it in the 80s, can you imagine, with all the original iconic characters?
Yeah.
I was like this little actor, and all these amazing people. And in those days, it used to say, had a big banner saying 21 million people watched this. They were like royalty.
Yeah.
And also in those days, they had separate green rooms for female and male actors.
Oh, really?
And you had to be careful which chairs you sat in. You mustn't sit in someone else's chair.
Well, yeah, because that was. I mean, who was still in it? I mean, did you still have like Pat Phoenix?
Yeah, they were all in it. They were all in it, and I mean, some extraordinary things. I'm trying to think. Len Fairclough. I took foster children into the Faircloughs. And Don Worthington was the name of my character, and Peter, who played Len, was fabulous to me. He'd been a bit of a raucous guy early on, in his career. He had a drink problem, but he'd been clean, clear of the drink for 14 years, and just to sit in a corner doing the Times and Telegraph crosswords. But he took me under his wing, took me to his home, took me to Bury Football Club, took me around, and I saw what it was to be really famous, because everywhere he went, hello, Len, hello, Len, hello, Len. And he was such an avuncular, strong, masculine, person, and I absolutely adored him. And he had the most awful ending to his life, it was just terrible. And of course, if you do anything wrong and you're in the public eye like he was, the fall from grace is just enormous, And it's such a sad, very sad situation.
Yeah.
And it's funny for everyone who's involved in a soap, a long soap. I mean, the reason that I didn't ever want to stay in it a long time, not that my character could, but I don't know. You don't have any power as an actor, really. But I did say 2 years is my maximum, because I didn't want to move up with my family to Manchester, And 2 years was a long time to be away as it was, you know.
Yeah.
But no, it was very interesting being in there and then coming back to it.
Yeah.
Also, I loved the old Corrie sets that I was involved in. When I first went, it was in the main studio, so there wasn't a special feeling really. Then when they had the studio block at Granada, out just over the road, it was fantastic. It was a lovely, lovely feeling. And everyone had to go into the green room before they went into the studio. And there was a great feeling. Whereas now where it is, it's all a bit kind of, you know, windswept and isolated, I think, you know, hasn't got that cozy feeling it had. You know, I've been on the set a few times, you know, it doesn't feel quite the same, but it was a very special time.
It's just funny to think that you were responsible for bringing in, well, two other Corrie icons, because the two girls that Rita and Len adopted, Sharon and Jenny, also went on to be Corrie legends. Jenny, now the landlady of the Rovers Return, all
Yes,
delivered to the street by you.
Well, the big thing, of course, that happened was they decided, apart from the executive director and the director decided not only on the long burn storylines, they decided to bring back Julie Goodyear.
Oh yes, of course. Now we've heard there's been a bit in the press recently about her sadly developing
yes.
Alzheimer's, but
Yes.
yeah, what was it like to work with her though?
Well, I mean, I remember Bill Roach saying, "Before she comes, you'll feel the waves,"
and you did,
and we did. But she lasted 10 days, you know, and I think there was a number of reasons for that. And I think the main reason was perhaps the acting style had changed, you know, because she was such a strong character actress, who, you know, would, you know, say, well, I think that he should go, and that's it, you know. It kind of was very, very big character, wonderful character. But really, things had moved on to be very naturalistic, and you had to be very, very natural. Like Simon in it, you know, he's to me, he was the bar you had to be like, because he could turn on a sixpence. He's such a natural actor, and I tried to be as natural as I could in the situation, because the more as time gone on, you got to non-act even more as an actor on television, particularly now, is because there are so reality television shows, and so it shows if you're acting. So when you learn those lines, and you want to be as natural as you can be.
Yeah, it really was a different world, because she first left in 1995, I think, and this was only what, 7 years later then, but Corrie had moved on, hadn't it?
But it was amazing, because there were about 40 people involved in her. They'd worked on her story for 6 months, and of course I went in one day, and they on a Sunday, and they went, "Nobody told you, Brian?" I said, "What?" They cancelled filming, and that was unheard of. I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, she's ill. She said she's got stress and can't come in." And so all my scenes were moved forward in that. And there's one little story. I don't know if we've got time for it, but
yeah, of course.
Oh well, so suddenly, if you didn't know your lines on the day, you know, it wasn't worth living. Do you know what I mean? The pressure's unbelievable. So I think it was on a Tuesday night, I got these new scripts through that I had to learn for the next day, because Julie had left and all my stuff was brought forward. And so I went to a petrol garage on the way home, a Shell garage, where there was a little shop, and I went in to get some milk. And then when I came out, guy said to me, "Have you got a brown case?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Some kids have just taken it out of your car." I thought, "Oh my God, that's the scripts."
Oh no.
Well, I mean, and there's no way in those days you couldn't print them off. You know, they were gone. There weren't any other scripts. You know, and to get anybody in the office to get them, and I said, "Well, did you see where they went?" And so we went down that Twitten on a very tough estate. Which is not far from Corrie. So I got in my car, and I didn't even think, and I drove into this estate, and I drove into the middle, and I got out, and I saw them, 4 of them coming towards me. I had my sunglasses, one had my sunglasses on, and I was hoping that they threw it. And I looked at them, and I said, "You something, something, something." And I don't know if they thought that's Richard Hillman or what.
Yeah.
They just hoods up and scarpered.
Brilliant.
And I ran towards where they came from, and I went down this path, and there was my case with the scripts all over the floor. And I picked them all up. I thought, oh, thank God. And then all these people were coming out of their houses going, oh, hello, Richard. Are you all right? Want to come in and have a cup of tea? I said, no, it's all right. Thank you very much.
So
I was just so relieved. I said, so that was just mad. Just one of the mad.
Sounds like you were standing up to a bunch of Aidan Critchleys there.
Yes. I'll never know to this day whether they thought, oh my God, it's Richard Hillman. Yeah. Another funny thing happened was when I was living with oh God, what's it called? Blind. Who I told you about? Jimmy, yeah, Jimmy Harkison. I was living with him, and he never told me. We had a break-in and stolen some stuff, and he never told me. He'd gone off early, and I had a morning off, and there was a knock on the door at 8:30. He hadn't mentioned to me that the police were coming around. I went downstairs all groggy, and I opened up the door, and there was a WPC standing there, and she went, "Oh, it's you," which was hilarious.
Yeah, I imagine you must get that, all the time. We've spoken to Conor McIntyre on the podcast before as well, who played Pat Phelan, and it's the same with him. The little old ladies coming up to him in the street and giving him a good old finger wagging. And
that's it. You're a very naughty boy.
Yeah. You met Conor McIntyre at the Soap Awards a few years ago, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. We've met up, and we've been on a podcast together. I think we were on This Morning together once as well.
Oh, right. Did you compare notes about being, serial killing notes?
Yeah, no,
body counts.
We just had a good chat. Very different characters.
Yeah.
But he's a lovely guy, and he was very kind to me. He said, "Well, you were the bar that we were all trying to achieve." So that was a very, very kind of him to say that.
Yeah, I mean, during his story, it was all about who's the most iconic villain. Is it Richard or is it Pat Phelan now?
Yeah. They're just very different, aren't they? Very, very different.
Were. Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe how the Richard Hillman story came together, because it just built incrementally, and we did. One day I had a script come through, because you don't even notice who's written anything because you have so many scripts. And as when I noticed, they used to give me monologues, which I don't give to many actors because they're pretty difficult, to learn. And I thought, this is amazing. And I thought, who's this? John Fay. And I had to find out who it was and ring him up, because his scripts were just extraordinary. Particularly the first stuff I noticed was when I was with Malcolm Hebden, and Richard starts to pour out a bit of his life story, and it was beautifully written, and it suddenly, God, it just gives so much depth to the character and colour to the character. So very lucky there. He was a Brookside writer originally, but he'd been a poet as well. So he wrote lovely stuff. Just had. Apparently they used to, because Coronation Street is writer driven, and EastEnders tend to be more producer driven.
Right.
But the writers sit around every 3 months and decide who's going to go where, and the script writers write it all down and then portion out the different things. And they said, well, where do you think Richard Hillman should go? And they go, well, I think you should do this and this, that, and the other. And then John Fay said, I think you should do this. And they went, right, go away and write it, John. And he went away and did write it. And that's why I think, it was so special, and the most unlikely character for me to play.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I started life playing mostly cheery, charming cockneys.
I know, what a turnaround. I mean, did you find after you left Corrie, were you getting offered more of the kind of sinister, villainous roles?
Yes. And obviously, yes, you're going to be pigeonholed to a certain extent. The only lucky thing for me, I think, was that I'd been an established actor on television for about 30 years. And also that's why I didn't want to stay in a soap, because I understand why the security of it obviously is fantastic, and the money and all of that. But as an actor, I like to me, I describe being in a soap as like being in jail with velvet handcuffs, you don't have any power, and you can see the cynicism creep in, and your whole life can become about how much money you're earning and what your storyline is. But I understand why people stay in and go back. I do understand it, because such an insecure profession. But I love the fact that I was already established as an actor. I could come out and tootle along a slightly elevated thing, doing lots of plays and tours and things, and playing in Manchester and nice odd telly roles. And I for instance, I did Guys and Dolls, in the West End with Claire Sweeney, and
Oh, yeah.
and toured, you know, at the Royal National Theatre. I worked there. None of this would have happened if I hadn't been in Corrie.
Mm.
And I did the Rocky Horror Show, and I started to do musicals, and obviously big panto. So which I'm still doing. I'm doing. I'm in South Manchester this year. I'm going to be doing Captain Hook in Peter Pan.
Oh, nice.
In Stockport Plaza, which is a beautiful theatre that they used in Peaky Blinders. Actually, it's a lovely theatre. So I'm very lucky to still be going now. I'm bloody 76. You know, I mean,
Yeah, it's great. You're still going strong.
It's fantastic. Still walking and talking.
Yeah, I did just before we go, Brian. I had to ask because you did make one more appearance in Corrie on that DVD spin-off, A Knight's Tale, where you were Dickie the Boatman. What was all that about? Tell me about that.
We've not talked about the Coronation Street musical.
Oh, we can talk about that as well. We've got time for both.
Jeez, mate. There's only a few people who know the true story behind that one. But Dickie the Boatman and the musical, you can blame Kieran Roberts, because he rang me up and persuaded me to be in these, and I always liked Kieran, so I kind of did it as a favour.
Yeah.
Actually, it was quite funny doing the boatman. I thought it was quite funny, being his cousin or whatever. But it was very difficult because I had to come out of the water, out of a lake, a really dirty lake, and it was really horrible. But it was good fun. It was good fun, and also David Kester, the director, I absolutely adored, and that's why I did it, really, just for a laugh, you know. And I thought it's not going to, because I never would have gone back into the main Coronation Street, because I said I'm never going back, whatever, you know. That's why I said I want to be in a body bag. That's it. He's finished, dead, you know, gone.
Yeah. Also, the same with Pat Phelan. They made sure they showed both of you being zipped up at the end, just to.
That's it.
They're not coming back.
No, that's it. That's it. Absolutely. No, absolutely. Well, it's often a big mistake to go back in. Some people can carry it off, you know, but you look at Leslie Grantham, for instance, that was a disaster, you know. So there was that. And then the Coronation Street musical was the saddest thing of all, because actually it was fantastic. It could have been really brilliant. It just needed some alterations, but it was a massive thing. I mean, I've never been involved in anything so big, because the set was 80 foot wide of the Coronation Street. On top of that, you had 20-piece orchestra. On top of that, you had 3 massive 80 foot wide video screens, because it was for arenas, and it was going to be a world tour. It was going to be everything, and for a number of reasons, we played it in Manchester Arena at the MEN, as it was then, for 2 nights, and had a big OK party, and then it all went wrong for a number of reasons, which are quite complicated. And I never got paid a penny.
Really?
No, we were originally going to do 4 dates. We even did the pre-publicity. We flew to Dublin, you know, Belfast and Newcastle, and then there was going to be an autumn tour. But the producers were a bit dodgy. But again, Kieran persuaded me to do it, because I'll tell you what, we had done we recorded the album.
Yes, it was based on that, wasn't it? It's got some good songs on it.
Well, mine was this is when, again, Kieran said, we'll send you a dummy of this. I said, I don't really want to do anything anymore about Coronation Street. He said, will you just listen to the song, Brian? And I listened to it, and I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah,
they said, would you record it? And I recorded it at Abbey Road Studios with the Royal Philharmonic. So that's another thing. I mean, it keeps giving. The Richard Hillman thing keeps giving. And we got paid properly for that as well. Yeah. So I went and recorded this song, which I think, you know, I did a pretty good job on. And that's all they wanted me to do in the musical. And actually, I've still got the review. I got the best reviews because I wasn't contaminated with the rest of the musical. I just did the 15 Richard Hillmans doing this fantastic routine with a 20-piece orchestra. And it was amazing, but I didn't get paid a penny. But the publicity person on that was a lovely girl who did all the Corrie stuff. She does like the Corrie tours and things like that. She gets me back for Coronation Street every year, and gradually I'm being paid off.
Brilliant. I'd have loved to have seen it. Wasn't Julie Goodyear involved in that as well?
Yes, she was. Yes, and I think the less said about it, the better.
Fair enough. Fair enough. To say no more. Well, Brian, it's been so lovely catching up with you today and hearing all about your time on Coronation Street. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
It's a pleasure, mate.
Right, just before we go, can I just ask you, can you do the look? Brilliant. I'm quaking in my boots. Right, thank you so much again. I hope everything goes well for you at the Panto this year, and you keep on working.
Oh, bless you.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.